Lothric, convergence of the transitory lands, was once ruled by a king and his queen. It wasn't always the shamble of a kingdom it is today, with undead filling the streets and a mad king raving lunacies in the lower garden. It used to be a place of strength and prosperity. Before the king of this land, Osiris, became the consumed king, he ruled his domain with power and controlled it with the Pillars of Lothric, the scholars, the priestesses, and the knights. The knights were the clear physical powerhouse of Lothric and kept it safe from foreign enemies. Their status as a pillar is solidified by the strength aggregating knight's ring. In Lothric, the knight has long been considered one of the three pillars of the king's rule, and were thus allowed to rear dragons. Long ago, the Lothric knights were dragon hunters, which explains why so much of their weaponry is imbued with lightning, the trademark of dragon hunting. However, the knights eventually tamed the drakes, and with them crushed anything that threatened Lothric's shores. The knights were the guardians and protectors of Lothric and her people. They were honored as such. The knights were known as sharing a place as a symbol of Lothric, along with the wyverns, and even the armor they wore solidified their dignity, for only those possessing a knight's resolve were fit to wear such a garment. They now patrol the high wall and the castle, holding steadfast to their duties to purge any outsider and keep their home safe. While the knights had their strength in dragons, the scholars had the knowledge of the Grand Archives. Dominion over the Grand Archives and proof of their pillar standing is found in the Scholar's Ring. In Lothric, the Scholar has long been considered one of the three pillars of the king's rule, and is therefore master of the Grand Archives. With this great store of information, the Scholars delved into a world of sinful sorcery. They defiled the sacred chime of the heavenly daughter Gertrude to fit their needs as the crystal chime, which granted the scholars a degree of success. In this case, their work enabled the chime to be suitable for casting both miracles and sorceries. According to the Archdeacon Greatstaff, what the scholars did here by mixing miracles of the gods and sorceries of man was a sin. That seems to have mattered naught to these corrupted academics, who seemed to think their own desires paramount to the kingdom's. The scholars were well aware of the power that this knowledge gave them in Lothric, so they protected their intellectual treasure by sealing the doors to the Grand Archives at the first sign of danger. With the fire fading and the spreading pus of man tainting the castle, the Grand Archives closed its doors for good. Today, only a few of its keys remain. As the curse of the undead began seeping into Lothric, the scholars shut themselves off from the world, and in doing so, cut off the world from the knowledge of the archives. There is no evidence to suggest that the scholars attempted to help the rest of the kingdom during the subsequent dark times. They appear to have only sought what would benefit those that dwelled within the Grand Archives. Yet through all their reckless decisions, the scholars were not completely blinded by their fervorous pursuit of insight. They acknowledge that the immense wisdom gathered from the archives is paired with an intense danger. The player can see this in the form of the cursing hands that exudes from all the bookshelves. So the scholars took precautions against this, staining their robes with wax and tending to their candles with a reverence that exceeds the simple burden of labor, for they know the dangers of the archive's store of knowledge all too well. The scholar robes seem to indicate that some of the scholars might have even been lost to the curses of the Grand Archives. The wax serves as a sort of countermeasure to the cursing hands, for if the player dons a head of wax, the bookshelves' curses are no longer any threat. The scholars were once the intellectual architects of Lothric, but they chose to hide away in the archives instead, forgetting the outside world. Finally, we have the Priestesses. Out of the three, the least is known about this pillar, though it is just as credible as the others, for in Lothric, the High Priestess has long been considered one of the three pillars of the king's rule. The High Priestess also served as the prince's wet nurse. The current High Priestess, Emma, is initially the one to help you leave the High Wall and venture out into the larger world of Dark Souls 3. When she then summons you back to face the final Lord of Cinder, Prince Lothric, she pleads,
Prince Lothric is in your hands. Please save his soul.
If Emma was Lothric's wet nurse, it would make sense for her to care about him and want you to save him from the despair he's fallen into. This theme of compassion seen in Emma seems to characterize this Pillar of Lothric. One of the identifiers of the Priestesses is a focus on miracles. As opposed to sorceries, which have a very wide range of use and come from man, miracles descend from the gods and are often honed in on healing, protection, and fortification. Not counting the Dark Ones, almost half of miracles in Dark Souls 3 deal with healing in some way or the other, and the majority of the others do not directly deal damage. The Priestesses even came together with the Knights to help them fulfill their role as protectors more proficiently. The Priestesses taught the Blessed Weapon miracle to the Lothric Knights. This blesses the right weapon as well as gradually restoring health. The Knight is said to have strengthened ties with the High Priestess after the scholars acquired the Grand Archives. The Knights wanted to be stronger in their position to make up for the great benefit that the Archives gave to the scholars. This is further evidence of the great weight and importance that the Grand Archives poses. This animosity between the Knights and scholars discredited the notion that the three pillars always worked to serve the King and Lothric together for the betterment of all. However, there is actually one more unofficial Pillar of Lothric. The Kings of Lothric needed a loyal task force that wouldn't get caught up in the bureaucracy of the larger groups or answer to the morals of the fickle masses. The members of this hidden pillar were called Hunters, and the most excellent were known as the King's Blackhand. These hunters serve Lothric on the fringes and in the shadows. For generations, rulers of Lothric have relied especially upon the Blackhand hunters to punish enemies in ways that the King's three pillars could not. To be a part of this ace squadron, one's family must have dutifully served the royal family for successive generations of kings. To date, no more than 3 such individuals have borne this distinction. Clearly, this is an exclusive group, as it should be if its members are doing such things as personally serving and protecting the royal family. Only 2 of these mysterious hunters' names are known, Gotthard and Kamui. Kamui wielded the weapons Onikiri and Udabachi as he looked after the prince of the kingdom. He seems to continue this service to the prince all the way through the events of the game, as he can be found with 2 other NPCs guarding the path to Prince Lothric. His speed, strength, and versatility in weapon choice all attest to the extraordinary skill level that is required of the Blackhand hunters. Unfortunately, Kamui blocks the path to the final Lord of Cinder, so he must be defeated. The other Blackhand, Gotthard, also brandished a pair of weapons, the Gotthard twin swords. It seems that paired weapons were a theme for the Blackhands. He's found dead at the entrance to the Grand Archives, holding the Grand Archives key that lets us in. His swords say that he was fleeing the castle. Why Gotthard was fleeing can only be guessed. However, he does seem to realize the sorry state of the kingdom, as he is summonable to fight Pontiff Sullivan and the Abyss Watchers. Additionally, the player would have never gotten into the Grand Archives without Gotthard taking a key outside. It seems the Blackhand hunters had a falling out by the time of Dark Souls 3, as Kamui stays by the side of royalty, while Gotthard attempts to help the player character fight against the Lords of Cinder, including his old masters, Lothric's royalty. The Pillars of Lothric once maintained order and balance in the kingdom, serving directly under the king. But the curse of the undead fractured Lothric. Some, like Emma and Gotthard, realized that the lords must return to their thrones, and did what they could to ensure that. Others, such as the Knights of Lothric and Kamui, could not relinquish their former duties, and they hold on to them steadfast, protecting fallen ideals and corrupted lords. In their splintered and decayed forms, it's obvious that this kingdom can no longer stand upon its once great Pillars of Lothric. Yo, what's up everybody, Mad Luigi here, and I want to say a big thank you to everybody that watched the video up till now. I put a lot of work into this video and it took a lot of time, so I appreciate that you guys watched it this far, and I'm happy that you guys enjoyed it, since if you're here, I'm assuming you enjoyed it. A big shout out to I Am Not Here or There, a Redditor that put together the majority of the lore information in this video. They made a lot of posts in the Dark Souls 3 Japanese subreddit about lore and items descriptions and all that stuff, and a lot of stuff that was used in this video, so a big shout out to them since they put in a lot of work to compile all that. If you like this video, I will be posting a lot more Dark Souls 3 lore and general content. I have a lot of other Dark Souls 3 content already up on my channel, so if you're interested in that, go check it out. And if you like the lore video, make sure you stick around because I'll be doing more of these. Thank you for watching, and peace out.